Okay, so I want you to just brace yourself for a second. I'm going to say two words, and I just want you to, honestly monitor your immediate physiological reaction to them. Ready?
Boy, I'm already nervous.
Daddy?
And baby girl.
And there it is, the collective flinch.
It is visceral, isn't it? For most people, those words, they don't just land flat. They conjure up a very specific, usually uh, uncomfortable image. We're thinking internet slang that feels a little too online, or maybe the romance novel section.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, the spine you kind of hide when you're reading on the subway, or let's be real, a therapist's couch.
It is definitely a loaded vocabulary. I mean, it
Mm.
carries so much cultural baggage,
Yeah.
usually pointing toward, power imbalances or the dreaded daddy issues or just a general sense of immaturity.
Exactly. But, and this is a massive but, we're going to ask you to suspend that cringe reflex for, I don't know, about 15 minutes. Because the source material we are deep diving into today takes these terms, which usually feel superficial or even just sexual, and drags them right into the deep end of psychology. It really does. We aren't looking at kinks today. We aren't looking at age gaps. We aren't even really talking about gender in the traditional sense. We are looking at a fascinating framework that strips these terms down to the studs to analyze nervous system regulation.
And that is the mission here. We want to see if we can get past the ick factor of the labels to really understand the machinery underneath. Because the source material makes a claim that it stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah.
It argues that if you look at the function, not the name, but the function, this dynamic is actually one of the most efficient ways to manage human stress in a modern world.
It's a bold claim, I know, but when you actually look at the mechanics of load distribution, it holds up.
So let's start with that aha moment, the one right at the top of the text. The author draws this really hard line between symbolic names and real functions.
Right. And this is the core thesis. The text argues that names are just symbols we hang on things, effectively the packaging. But functions are the actual psychological jobs being performed inside the relationship. And the writer argues that in this specific dynamic, the person labeled baddie is functionally speaking performing the role of mommy.
Which, I mean, that sounds like a total contradiction, right? Daddy is functionally mommy.
Yeah.
If I just heard that out of context, I think someone is, well, confused. When I hear daddy, especially in a relationship context or even a traditional family context, I think of the law. I think of rules.
Authority.
Yeah, the head of the household. I definitely do not think of mommy.
And that's the trick. The text asks us to ignore the gender of the word and look at, well, developmental psychology. What does a mommy, or maybe more accurately, a primary maternal caregiver, what do they actually do for an infant? What's the biological function?
Well, obviously feeding them, cleaning them, keeping them alive.
Beyond the physical, though, I'm talking about the nervous system. When a baby is crying, when they are just overwhelmed by the world, what does that caregiver do?
They soothe. They shush them. They rock them. They basically tell them, you are okay, I've got you.
Precisely. It's regulation. The primary caregiver acts as an external nervous system for the child. The child is chaotic, screaming, dysregulated.
They can't do it themselves.
No, they literally cannot calm themselves down yet. So the caregiver picks them up, holds them, and provides containment. They are the walls that hold the child's emotions together.
Okay, I follow that. That's pretty standard attachment theory. You sort of borrow the parent's calm until you can build your own.
Exactly. Now, look at the checklist the source provides for the daddy role in this specific relationship dynamic. What are the key traits the author lists?
Let me pull that up. Okay, the list is emotional steadiness, protection without control, predictability, take it, reassurance, and holding the container.
It's the same list. That is the maternal function. The argument here is that the daddy label creates a structure. It feels big, it feels solid, maybe it feels masculine in its aesthetic, but the content inside that structure is pure care. It's nurturing.
This is what I found so interesting. If the function is maternal care, why not just call it mommy or just partner?
Yeah.
Why do we need this specific, loaded label?
And that's where the analysis gets really nuanced regarding adult psychology and attraction.
Mm-hmm.
Mommy as a label in a romantic relationship between adults.
Yeah.
It's often a total attraction killer.
Yeah, that's fair. It kind of implies smothering.
Right.
Or it implies the other person is a man-child who needs their laundry done.
Right. Mommy implies you're in trouble for not eating your vegetables or that you're being nagged. It feels lateral or even intrusive. Whereas daddy structurally implies authority and capability. By using the daddy label, you create a container that feels strong enough to lean on, but you fill it with that soft maternal regulation.
So it's a hack, the linguistic interface hack.
It is. It separates the care from the baggage of mothering. You get the containment of the father archetype with the soothing of the mother archetype.
And the text calls this the emotional labor of stability. I really wanted to pause on that phrase because I think we often view labor in relationships as, you know, doing chores or planning dates. But this is different.
It's internal work. It is active, sometimes exhausting work. I mean, think about how hard it is to stay genuinely calm when someone else is freaking out.
Oh, it's incredibly hard. My instinct is to either freak out with them, just join the chaos, or to tell them to stop it because it's making me anxious.
Right, to shut it down or to amplify it, but to simply hold it. To be the rock that the waves crash against without moving, that requires a tremendous amount of emotional maturity. That is what the daddy figure is doing in this text. They are absorbing the chaos of the world so the other person doesn't have to.
Which brings us to the other side of this equation, the person who's being held. Baby girl. Okay, I have to be the skeptic here for a second. We've managed to sort of rehabilitate daddy a little bit as this noble regulator, but baby girl, that feels a lot harder to justify for a modern audience. It feels infantilizing. It feels like we're taking a competent adult woman and reducing her to a helpless child. How does the source material reconcile that?
Well, the text is actually very aggressive on this point. It argues that we are confusing childishness with openness. It explicitly states, the baby girl in this dynamic is not infantilized, she is unarmored.
Unarmored. Okay, let's unpack that because that sounds poetic, but what does it mean practically?
Well, think about your average Tuesday. You have a job, you have traffic, you have bills, you have social obligations, you have to navigate office politics. How much of your day do you spend just bracing yourself?
Most of it. You have to be on, you have to be professional, you have to be competent.
That is armor. That is a state of high vigilance. And the source argues that for many modern women and men, frankly, though the text focuses on this dynamic hyper-independence, is a trauma response. It's the belief that I have to do it all because no one else will do it right, or I can't rely on anyone. You are constantly watching the door for threats.
So the baby girl state isn't about ability. It's not that she can't open the jar or pay the bill.
No, not at all. It's that for 10 minutes or an hour, she doesn't have to. It is the permission to put the armor down.
That's a critical distinction. It's the difference between I am helpless and I am resting.
Exactly. The text lists the characteristics of this state: feeling openly, receiving care, resting without vigilance, and expressing needs without defense.
Resting without vigilance. Wow, that hits home. I think a lot of people sleep, but they don't rest. You know, they're still clenched.
And you can't unclench if you don't trust the environment. And this is, I think, the most profound insight in the text. It says that this baby girl persona, this softness, this sweetness, is a reactive state. It only exists in response to safety.
So you can't just decide to be a baby girl in a vacuum.
You can try, but you'll get hurt. If you try to be soft and unarmored with a partner who is inconsistent or critical or dismissive, what happens?
You armor back up immediately.
You have to survive. So the text is saying that if you see someone in this dynamic who is acting small or sweet, that isn't a sign of their weakness. It's a testament to the strength of the container the other person has built.
There was a line in the source that really stuck with me here. What looks like softness is actually trust.
That completely reframes it. It stops being about playing pretend and starts being about the luxury of safety.
It is a luxury to be able to shut off your threat detection system, to just close your eyes and know that someone else is watching the perimeter. That is a rare physiological state for adults.
It really is.
But I want to push back again. Let's look at the power dynamic. Because even if we agree it feels nice to be held, isn't there a danger here? If one person is the big, strong container and the other is the small, soft receiver, aren't we just setting the stage for abuse? Or at least a loss of agency? If daddy says jump, does baby girl have to ask how high?
That is the most valid fear, and it's definitely the most common criticism. Is this just 1950s gender roles repackaged with new slang?
Right. It sounds like a slippery slope to make me a sandwich.
Well, the source material tackles this head-on with the concept of autonomy. It argues that a healthy baby-girl dynamic is actually defined by autonomy.
How can you be autonomous and dependent at the same time? That sounds like a paradox.
Because you aren't dependent. You are choosing to receive. The criteria the text gives are very clear. She chooses closeness, she can say no, and she does not lose agency.
So the no is what makes the yes real.
Precisely. If she cannot say no, if she is, financially trapped or emotionally coerced or, God forbid, afraid of violence,
It's not this dynamic.
no, that is not a baby girl dynamic. That is captivity. That is abuse. The text makes a really nuanced point here. The dynamic works specifically because the autonomy and the care coexist.
It reminds me of the analogy of being trapped in a crib versus, you know, choosing to curl up in a blanket fort.
That's a perfect analogy. One is confinement, the other is comfort. And the source emphasizes that what looks like power in the daddy role, the decision making, the leading, is actually service. It is responsibility.
Service. That really flips the script on the alpha male trope, doesn't it?
Completely. We often confuse the aesthetic of power with the function of power. We see a guy who is assertive and protective, and we think dominance.
Oh.
But if he's doing it right, according to this text, he is serving the other person's nervous system. He is carrying the mental load. He is making the decisions so she doesn't have to fatigue herself making them.
I think that concept of decision fatigue is huge here.
Yes.
Sometimes the most romantic thing someone can say is, I've handled dinner, just get in the car.
Yes. That is a microdose of this dynamic. I have the load, you can just exist.
So if we strip away the weirdness of the words, we are basically just looking at a manual for advanced emotional support.
It's a manual for load distribution.
Load distribution. That sounds like engineering.
Well, relationships are systems, and systems fail when the load is unbalanced. The source uses this framework to explain why so many normal relationships fall apart. It identifies two main failure states regarding regulation.
Okay, let's break those down. What's the first one?
The first failure state is when one person wants to soften. They're desperate to put the armor down, but no one is holding safety.
Oh, that's just heartbreaking. That's the partner who comes home crying and just needs to be held, and the other person offers logic or tells them they're overreacting.
Or just checks their phone. The container isn't there, so the person tries to soften, they fall, they hit the floor, and they learn, okay, it's not safe to fall. So they armor up, they become harder, colder.
And the relationship loses intimacy. It becomes a partnership, maybe, but the vulnerability is just gone.
Exactly. It becomes two soldiers in a foxhole. They might have each other's backs, but no one is resting.
And the second failure state.
The second is when one person holds control, but without care.
That's the tyrant.
That's the tyrant. I'm in charge, do what I say. But there is no emotional steadiness behind it. It's just ego. It's just demand. For the system to relax, the regulatory role has to be clear, but it must be benevolent.
Benevolent. That's a key word. It implies goodwill.
It implies that the purpose of the control is the well-being of the other person, not the gratification of the leader.
Now, there is one more aspect of this text that I think saves it from being problematic or, sexist, and that's the fluidity of it.
Yes. This is crucial for anyone listening who thinks this sounds too rigid.
Because if we say men are regulators, women are receivers, we are right back in the Stone Age. But the source says something different.
It says, healthy systems allow flexibility. The rules can shift.
So the daddy can need to be the baby girl.
Effectively, yes. I mean, life happens. The daddy partner gets sick. They lose a job. They have a mental health crisis.
They get overwhelmed.
Exactly. In a healthy dynamic, the partner who is usually the receiver just steps up and becomes the regulator.
So the baby girl becomes the mommy functionally.
Exactly. She holds the container. She says, it's okay, I've got this. You can fall apart now. And the dynamic reverses.
And the text says this doesn't break the relationship.
No, it strengthens it. Because it proves that these roles aren't rigid identities. You aren't born a baby girl. It's a functional need. It's asking, who is holding the flashlight right now? Who is driving the car? It can change based on who has the capacity.
That really demystifies it. It stops it from being a personality type, I am a submissive, and turns it into a strategy. I'm currently overloaded, I need you to drive.
Precisely. The labels, daddy, baby girl,
Yeah.
they're just shorthand. They are shortcuts to a feeling. The text says, names point to feelings. Functions create safety.
Names point to feelings, functions create safety. That's the bumper sticker.
It is. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it captain and first mate. You can call it rock and water. You can call it the gardener and the flower. The words are just the trigger for the mindset. The reality is the regulation.
It explains why this resonates with people who would never step foot in a dungeon or a kink club. We all crave that moment of relief. We all crave the permission to feel, as the text puts it.
And in a lot of ways, society tells us we don't have that permission. We have to be stoic. We have to be adults 24/7. This dynamic is a carved-out space where you can suspend that requirement.
It effectively says, You are safe enough to be small.
Baby girl is baby girl means safety has made gentleness possible. That's the quote. Gentleness isn't a weakness, it's a luxury that is purchased with safety.
I really hope our listeners taking a second to absorb that. Because how many times have we judged ourselves for wanting to be taken care of? Or judged a partner for being needy?
We pathologize neediness. We live in a culture that idolizes total independence. But biologically, we are co-regulatory animals. We need to borrow each other's nervous systems sometimes.
Borrowing each other's nervous systems. That's a much more scientific way of saying, hold me, I'm having a bad day.
But it's the same thing. When the daddy figure offers that calm presence, they are literally lending their regulated nervous system to the partner who is dysregulated. They are syncing up.
It makes me think about how we structure our own relationships. Even if we hate the words daddy and baby girl, and I still think it's okay if you do.
It is perfectly okay to hate the words. You never have to use them.
But we shouldn't throw the concept out just because the label is cringe.
Right. You can refuse the label, but you cannot refuse the need. If you don't have those functions, if you don't have the containment and the permission to rest, the relationship is going to struggle. It doesn't matter how equal or modern you look on paper. If no one is regulating the other, you're just roommates with anxiety.
Roommates with anxiety. I think you just diagnosed half the dating pool.
Unfortunately, yes, and that's why this text is so valuable.
It is interesting how a text about such a specific, niche, slightly taboo dynamic can actually diagnose the problems in very standard marriages.
Often the fringe explains the center. These dynamics just make explicit what is often implicit. They say the quiet parts out loud, they formalize the need for care, they write a contract for it.
And that clarity is probably why it works. They aren't guessing. They know, I am the container, you are the receiver.
Clarity is safety. Ambiguity is stress.
Well, this has been a journey. We've gone from cringy internet slang to the biology of the nervous system in about 15 minutes.
That is the goal of the deep dive.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, we usually like to leave you with something to chew on. We've talked a lot about the source material's view on safety and armor.
And I think the most powerful thing the source offers is the idea that relief from self-protection is a rare gift.
It really is. So here's our final thought for you to carry into your day. I want you to forget the labels daddy or baby girl for a second. Strip them away entirely. Look at the people closest to you, your partner, your boyfriend, even your family.
And ask yourself this. In your dynamic, who is holding the regulatory load right now?
Is it balanced?
Hmm?
Do you take turns? Or is one person carrying the weight of the world while the other person is oblivious?
And most importantly, is it safe enough for anyone to ever truly put down their armor?
Because if the answer is no,
Mm.
it doesn't matter what you call each other. You have work to do.
Indeed.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the next one.